Off the coast of Egypt, 10 meters beneath the Mediterranean, a diver swims up to a face. It's carved from red granite, more than 5 meters tall, lying on its side in the silt. A colossal statue of a god, part of a temple where pharaohs were once crowned. Around it lie hundreds of anchors, dozens of shipwrecks, and the streets of what was once Egypt's greatest port, a city that controlled everything entering the country by sea. Its name was Thonis-Heracleion. For centuries, people weren't even sure it had been real. Then, in the year 2000, it was found, an entire city swallowed whole by the sea. And here's the unsettling part. We now have a fairly good idea of how it happened, and it's the kind of thing that could take a coastline down again. That city is number 1 on this list, but it is far from the only place where the sea has closed over a town, a temple, or a street you could still walk down today. From a pirate capital that dropped into a harbour in minutes, to a 9,000-year-old village with a stone circle on the seabed, these are 10 real sunken worlds, and every one of them is still giving up its secrets. Let's start the countdown. We begin with a city that didn't sink over centuries, it sank in minutes. In the late 1600s, Port Royal on the coast of Jamaica was one of the richest and most notorious towns in the Americas. A booming English trade port that doubled as a haven for privateers and pirates, so packed with taverns and vice that it was nicknamed the wickedest city on earth. It was built, unfortunately, on a spit of loose sand. On the morning of June the 7th, 1692, a massive earthquake, estimated at around magnitude 7.5, struck, followed by a tsunami. The sandy ground beneath the town did something horrifying. It liquefied, turning momentarily to something like quicksand. Roughly 2/3 of Port Royal slid straight into the harbour. Around 2,000 people died almost instantly, with thousands more in the aftermath. Whole streets, forts and houses simply dropped beneath the water. And that sudden burial is exactly why the site is so extraordinary today. The submerged town lies under just 1 to 12 meters of water, sealed in low-oxygen sediment that has preserved it like a time capsule of a single morning in 1692. Archaeologists, including major digs by Texas A&M, and more recently a robotic 3D mapping survey backed by American scientists, have pulled up Chinese porcelain, pewter plates, wine bottles, and a brass pocket watch made in Amsterdam. That watch is famous because its hands are said to have stopped near 1143, supposedly the exact minute the sea took the city. It's a haunting image, though honestly, that precise time has never been fully verified. In 2025, the Sunken ensemble was finally named a World Heritage Site, and much of the drowned town is still down there, waiting to be mapped. The next city didn't fall to an earthquake or a storm. It was drowned on purpose. Beneath Qiandao Lake, the Thousand-Island Lake in China's Zhejiang province, lies Shicheng, the Lion City, named for the mountain that stands over it. Its roots reach back over 1,000 years, possibly to the Tang dynasty, though most of the beautiful stonework you can see today dates to the later Ming and Qing periods. In 1959, the Chinese government needed a hydroelectric dam. Building it meant flooding an entire valley and the ancient city in it. So around 300,000 people were relocated, and the water rose over Shicheng's walls, gates, and temples. It wasn't destroyed, it was submerged, intact, and then quietly forgotten for decades. What makes the Lion City remarkable is the state it's in. Sitting between roughly 26 and 40 meters down, in cool, dark, still, fresh water, the stone has been shielded from sun, wind, and rain for over 60 years. The result is almost eerie. City walls with 5 separate gates, paved streets, and hundreds of ornate memorial archways carved with lions, dragons, and phoenixes. Their edges still crisp, their carvings still sharp, as if the sculptors had just set down their tools. It was rediscovered by a government expedition in 2001, and today only experienced divers can visit the cold, black water. But here's the quiet problem. Much of the city has never actually been mapped, and some structures are beginning to collapse. It's a perfectly preserved ancient city, one we're still only beginning to explore, and one that won't stay perfect forever. If ancient Rome had a Las Vegas, it was Baiae. On the Bay of Naples, this was the pleasure resort of the Roman elite, a town of luxury villas, heated spas fed by volcanic springs, and such legendary excess that one Roman writer called it a harbour of vice. Julius Caesar had a place here. So did the emperors Augustus, Nero, and Caligula, and today a large part of it is underwater. Baiae didn't drown in a disaster. It sank slowly, pulled down by the very thing that made it luxurious in the first place: volcanoes. This stretch of coast sits on the Campi Flegrei, a restless volcanic zone, and the ground here rises and falls over time as the magma below shifts, a phenomenon called bradyseism. Over centuries, that slow subsidence dropped the old shoreline by around 6 meters, sliding streets, villas, and statues gently beneath the waves. The result is one of the most beautiful underwater sites in the world, now protected as a submerged archaeological park. Divers and snorkelers glide just a few meters down over intact Roman roads, the mosaic floors of villas, and the ornate remains of an emperor's private grotto, where statues still stand on the seabed, furred with sponges and circled by fish. It's often called the largest collection of Roman mosaics still sitting where they were laid. But Baiae comes with a live warning attached. The Campi Flegrei is not extinct. It's an active caldera, and right now the ground beneath the whole region is rising and straining again. The same slow geological breathing that sank ancient Baiae is still going on today, under a very much inhabited coastline. For 600 years, Rungholt was treated as little more than a ghost story, the Atlantis of the North Sea. Legend told of a wealthy medieval trading town off the German coast, drowned in a single terrible night as punishment for the arrogance of its people. Sailors claimed you could still hear its church bells ringing under the tide flats. It made a wonderful story. The question was whether any of it was true. The night itself was real and catastrophic. In January 1362, a colossal storm surge known as the Grota Mandrenka, the Great Drowning of Men, tore into the North Sea coast and killed at least 25,000 people. Rungholt, sitting in what is now the exposed mudflats of the Wadden Sea, was wiped off the map and buried under water and silt. Then, in 2023, scientists finally pinned it down. Teams from several German universities swept more than 10 square kilometers of tidal flats using magnetic and electromagnetic survey equipment, instruments that can read buried structures without digging. What they found was startling: a 2-kilometer chain of 54 settlement mounds, drainage systems, a sea dike with a harbour gate, and, at the centre, the foundations of a large church, about 40 meters by 15. Rungholt was real. But, and this is the honest part, finding the church doesn't confirm the legend of a glittering, sinful metropolis. What the science shows is a substantial parish town, not necessarily a fabulously rich one. The foundations have been detected by instruments not yet dug up, and the tides that revealed Rungholt are now eroding it away again. A lost town found only as magnetic shadows in the mud, and already slipping back into it. High in the Andes, on the border of Bolivia and Peru, sits Lake Titicaca, the highest large lake in the world and one of the most sacred places in the ancient Andes. For decades, it has attracted rumors of a lost city, even an Andean Atlantis hidden beneath its cold blue water. So let's be clear about what's actually down there, because the truth, while different from the legend, is genuinely remarkable. Since 2012, a Belgian-led team of underwater archaeologists has been systematically diving the lake. Near a reef called Kwa, off the sacred island of the sun, they documented something extraordinary. Deliberate ritual offerings from the Tiwanaku people, a powerful civilization that rose here more than 1,000 years before the Inca. Divers brought up ceramic incense burners shaped like snarling felines, the bones of sacrificed young llamas, and ornaments of gold, shell, and lapis lazuli. At another reef, they recovered an intact, sealed stone box holding a tiny llama carved from orange spondylus shell, a shell that had travelled all the way from the Pacific coast of Ecuador, alongside a rolled cylinder of gold. Here's what the evidence shows and what it doesn't. What's real, peer-reviewed, and astonishing is that people were making rich offerings to this lake for well over 1,000 years, and that rising water later submerged shoreline settlements too. What is not supported by real evidence is the popular idea of a grand sunken temple or lost city beneath the surface. The dramatic underwater ruins along Turkey's southern coast, in bright turquoise shallows, there's a place where you can drift in a boat and look straight down at a staircase. It climbs out of the seabed, up toward a shore it no longer reaches, the steps of a house whose owners are 2,000 years gone. This is Kekova and the sunken town tied to the ancient settlement of Simena. These were communities of the Lycians, an independent people of the Anatolian coast, famous for their distinctive tombs and their early experiment in a kind of federal democracy. On Kekova Island and around the village of Simena, you can still see the town's bones, half in and half out of the water. House foundations, walls, staircases descending into the sea. Most of the places on this list are thousands of years younger than this one. Off the coast of Atlit in Israel, lying 8 to 12 meters down and a few hundred meters offshore, is a village that is around 9,000 years old. A settlement from the Stone Age, from a time before pottery, before writing, before the pyramids were even imagined. It's called Atlit Yam, and it is one of the oldest submerged settlements ever found. It was spotted in 1984 by a marine archaeologist surveying for shipwrecks, and what's been uncovered since is astonishing. There are rectangular stone houses, a stone-lined freshwater well, and most hauntingly, a semicircle of 7 standing stones, megaliths weighing around 600 kilos each, some marked with cup-shaped hollows, arranged around what was once a freshwater spring. More than 90 human skeletons have been recovered, so perfectly preserved that researchers confirmed the earliest genetically identified case of tuberculosis in human history, in the bones of a woman and an infant buried 9,000 years ago. And how did an entire village end up on the seabed? That's the open question. The mainstream answer is the slow, relentless rise of the Mediterranean after the last ice age, gradually drowning a coastline that used to sit further out. But there's a more dramatic competing idea, that around 8,500 years ago, a collapse of the flank of Mount Etna in Sicily sent a tsunami racing across the eastern Mediterranean, and that the villagers of Atlit Yam fled so suddenly they left a huge pile of fish sitting where they dropped it. That tsunami theory is contested, not the consensus. But it leaves you with a striking image, a Stone Age stone circle standing quietly off the coast of Gujarat in western India, lies one of the most argued-over underwater sites in the world, because it sits exactly where legend places one of the most famous cities in Hindu tradition. Ancient texts describe Dwarka as the golden city of the god Krishna, said to have been reclaimed by the sea after his death. And in those same waters, divers have found real, submerged, human-made structures. So what's actually there? Starting in the 1980s, India's National Institute of Oceanography, led by the archaeologist S.R. Rao, surveyed the seabed off Dwarka and the nearby island of Bet Dwarka. They documented genuine archaeology, dressed stone walls, structures laid out in a grid extending over a kilometre out to sea, and a large number of stone anchors. clear evidence of a substantial ancient port town, broadly dated to the 2nd millennium BC. Here's where care matters. The submerged harbour is real, but connecting these stones directly to the legendary city of Krishna is interpretation, not proof. There's no inscription, no artifact that says, "This was Krishna's Dwarka." And a second, even bolder claim that sonar in the nearby Gulf of Kambat revealed a 9,000-year-old city on the seafloor is treated with real skepticism by many archaeologists who point out that a single carbon-dated piece of driftwood doesn't prove a civilization, and that some of the structures may be natural formations in a fierce tidal channel. So the honest picture is genuinely exciting on its own terms. There is a real sunken port off Dwarka, thousands of years old. Whether it is the Dwarka of legend is a question. Off the southern tip of Greece, in water so shallow and clear you could snorkel it, lies a town you can still navigate street by street. It's called Pavlopetri, and it may be the oldest fully mapped sunken town on Earth. People first settled here around 3,500 BC, and the town lived through the entire Bronze Age, the age of the Mycenaeans, of the world Homer would later write about, before it was abandoned and drowned more than 3,000 years ago. What makes Pavlopetri unique isn't treasure, it's the layout. Lying just and so we return to Abukir Bay, off the coast of Egypt, and the greatest sunken city ever found. Before Alexandria existed, Thonis-Heracleion was Egypt's gateway to the world, the mandatory port of entry for every ship arriving from the Mediterranean, a place where the Greeks and the Egyptians met, traded, and worshipped. It stood at the mouth of a branch of the Nile, threaded with canals, crowned by a great temple of the god Amun, where pharaohs came to receive their right to rule. And then it vanished so completely that historians began to wonder if it had ever really existed. In the year 2000, the underwater archaeologist Frank Goddio found it.